Thank you guys, thank you so much. This is extremely personal for me to be here today, to talk about mental health, tell a little bit of my personal story, and it's really meaningful to do it in this room. You know, I served this nation, the United States Army, for 9 years, and what people don't realize is I served this community in this very room for the last 15. I've sat in these seats, so it's super meaningful to me to kind of come home today and be able to tell my story and look in the eyes of so many close friends and mentors and men in this room that men that I tell I love you to. That's all right. I told my dinner last night I'm a recovering tough guy. That's kind of my thing, you know, and I've got so much in common with the people in this room. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the stuff up here on the board, but what I do want to ask you is to take a look at the picture of that little dude. That's me. That's me at the age of about 4 or 5. And I'm going to talk about that in a little while. You know, to be here and to share a couple of nuggets, hopefully, from my story that have helped me go from complete suffering to a place of peace, and that I've led with the way I've led. If I can give you guys a couple of nuggets today so you can go back and help your folks, you know, that's really my intent today. But I'd really be remiss if I didn't start by telling you guys a little bit about how I got here and how I kind of got to this stage. You know, about 10 years ago, I was waking up in the morning. This was a time in my life when I was having a really hard time, guys. I was drinking every night. I was on a bunch of medications, and I was suffering in silence. I was suffering deeply in silence. I wasn't telling anybody. I was pushing all my feelings down. I looked great on paper. I had a great job, national job, running across the country. And I was suffering. I was afraid to be alone at night. I was scared. I didn't know what I was scared of. I was sad. I didn't know why I was sad. And one morning about 10 years ago, it was September 2012, I woke up in the morning, and my beautiful wife's face was right here. I mean, she was right here, and I didn't know what was going on. And she said, "Are you okay, babe?" I said, "What are you talking about? I'm fine." She said, "Honey, you've been crying." And it wasn't the first time I cried in my sleep, but it was probably the worst time I'd cried in my sleep. And it felt like if you would have taken a pot of water and threw it on my pillow, that's how wet I was. And I remember that look in her eyes when she looked at me, that helpless look. You ever look at someone you love and you just nothing you can do for them? It sucks. It's the most helpless feeling in the world. And I had that looking at my beautiful wife, who I love more than anything. I looked her in the eyes and I said, I'm going to the VA right now. I'm going to get some help. I'm going to go talk to somebody. It was like 7 a.m. on a Friday morning. And I got in my truck and I drove to the VA. And what's so crazy about this, I wasn't going to the VA for me. I was going to the VA for her. I didn't want her to feel bad. You know, I'm good. I got this. You know, I'm good. I'm going to go down there and talk to somebody. I'll be fine, right? I got in my truck and I drove to the VA. And I got to tell you something about me before I tell you the rest of this story. When I showed up at West Point as a plebe, as a 17-year-old kid, from that day on, or maybe a few weeks after that on, I got a nickname. And if you know anything about the United States Military Academy at West Point, and if you know anything about the kind of people that go there, stay there, and graduate from there, you'll understand when I tell you what my nickname was, that I have something wrong with me. My nickname was All Gas, No Brakes. All right, so to get a nickname like that at a place like that, you got to have a few screws loose already coming in. So I had all that, right? And I say that because I drove to that VA hospital and I had my hands on that steering wheel and I was paralyzed. And it took me 45 minutes to move. I had my hands on the steering wheel, and I remember looking up under at the building through the windshield, and I couldn't get out of the car. And I had a real hard time. I had a hard time walking through that door. And the reason I had such a hard time walking through the door is because I didn't think I was worthy. I didn't think my pain was bad enough. I didn't think my war was hard enough. I didn't think my childhood was rough enough. And I knew a ton of people who had it worse than me. I know for a fact, from the bottom of my heart, there are people in this room that feel that same bullshit. And there are people in your units that you work with. And there are people in your family. There are people that you love, people that you lead, that feel that same feeling inside, that their pain and their trauma isn't worth it. They're not worthy, right? They look around. Think about it. All the different stimuli, all the things that happen to us in this life. I don't care if it's a mother who beat you a little bit, dad who wasn't very nice to you, maybe dad and mom weren't around, right? Maybe you got a toxic relationship and you go home every day and you can't connect with the people you love. Maybe you got in a real bad car accident. I don't care where your trauma came from, where your pain came from. Now hear me now. My name is Josh Rizzo. If you don't remember anything about me, if I've known you for 25 years in this room or 25 minutes, hear me now. Your pain is worthy. If you've got something going on inside, you can talk about it. In fact, it's your responsibility to talk about it. It's fine to not be okay. It's not okay to suffer in silence like I did for so many years. And what I started learning after I started taking care of myself, that was the most heroic act that I have ever done in my entire life, was walking through that door and going, guys, I don't know what the hell to do anymore. I'm sad, I'm scared, and I'm falling apart. I'm crumbling. I'm trying to take care of everyone else in my life, and I'm not doing anything for me. So I made that decision. I walked through that door, and thank God I did. All right? Because when I walked through that door, I started to realize that mental health and taking care of ourselves was a lot more than lab coats and pills and therapy with, I thought it was just a whole bunch of people that didn't care about me, right? I'm not going to be able to connect with these guys, these people. They don't know anything about me, right? The reality is, the sunny side of mental health is development, is growth. And I've done so much in the last 10 years. And I've learned so much, and I've tried so many different things. I brought this slide. I bring this to a lot of workshops because people look at it and they have a lot of questions. I was with the Air Force last week, and that ecstatic dance one in there, the top middle, I had a lot of explaining to do. I had about 3.5 hours with some staff sergeants from the Air Force, so I had a lot of explaining to do. But I bring this slide up because there's a lot of things we can do to take care of ourselves. And the most important thing, I always get the question, what's the most important things up there? And I'll tell you, I'm going to talk about them in a moment, but the meditation, the reflection, the journaling, having something where you check in with yourself and course correct, that's number one. And number two is that bottom left, that inner child work. Now, y'all saw that picture of my little 5-year-old face up there, right? That was a picture that I used to look at and cry. I had such a hard time looking at a picture of me as a kid because it reminded me of childhood and the time when I wasn't safe and the time when I was scared. And now, that picture is the background on my iPhone. It has been for the last 4 years, and it reminds me to take care of myself and not neglect myself, right? And talk better to myself. But I've had all this time to kind of think about it, right? And do all kinds of things and get into the sunny side. And as I'm thinking about how I can help and what we can do in this industry and what we can actually do, I came across this statistic. And this will be the last slide that you guys will see today until my contact info at the end, okay? But this slide right here really nailed it home for me last summer. What jumps out at me is the fact that this was 2018. Guys, 2018, before the pandemic, for every one construction fatality, we're having over 5 suicides. 5 for every one. That's on us, right here in this room, right? What are we going to do? We can't wait for the MDs. We can't wait for the people a lot smarter than me to help us, right? We've got to get people to that door. We've got to get people help. What can we do as leaders in this room, right? So what I did was I spent the whole last summer kind of putting together all the stuff I've been through in my life, all the stuff I've walked through, and I thought about how can we actually affect this number? What can we do in this room? And what I'd like to invite everyone in this room to think about is an airplane, all right? Because we got to take care of ourselves first. So if we think about an airplane, right? We've got the pilot, That's you. That's you. That's everyone in this room. You're a pilot, and you're flying your airplane, right? So we're going to talk about the pilot and how to take care of the pilot. And secondary, the first class cabin, right? All the people we love, all the people closest to us. How do we take care of them at a deeper level, considering their mental health, right? Because that's important. When we come to work and don't perform, it's usually not because of work, right? It's because something's going on at home. We got to make sure that's solid first. And then finally, the main cabin, right? How do we take care of our communities we serve, the people we lead, our churches, our organizations, right? Our shops. How do we take care of those we lead? What does that look like, sound like, smell like, feel like, right? So starting with the pilot, right? Let's think about the pilot. For me, in my life, the greatest thing, the most important thing is formal reflection. So for us personally, there's three things: formal reflection, intentional action, and exploring perspective. So for me, formal reflection means taking time every single day, and being intentional about it and scheduling it and having a meditation or a prayer in the morning. That's what I do, okay? I set aside time, I meditate, I pray, and as soon as I finish that meditation and prayer, I go right to my 5-minute journaling practice. 5 minutes. Journaling's beautiful. They say you carry your shoulds in your shoulders. You know, you get all tense because you have all this stuff on your mind that you should be doing. Get it written on the page. It relieves a hell of a lot of stress, right? But more importantly, people say, I don't know how to journal. I don't know what I should do. So for me, what I did was I put together a little framework. And it's just 2 sections. And the first section says grateful for. And I write what I'm grateful for, right? And this morning I wrote about the dinner I had last night. I had a fantastic dinner. I wrote about the people I hung out with. It was 2 sentences and I'm done. The second section, and this is a section that seems a little funky. I started this at the end of 2020, and I started with one of my teammates. And here's what I did. I was looking around. You think about everyone you love in your life, right? Everyone you take care of. When you see them struggling, you see them trying their hardest, and they're having a hard time, what do? You pick them up. You encourage them. You tell them, hey, man, you got this. You can do this, right? You give them that loving, caring leadership that they deserve. I was doing that for everybody. But I wasn't doing it for myself. Think about the way you talk to yourself when you start to struggle. You start screwing stuff up, make a wrong turn, forget something at work. You start kicking your own ass, don't you? Right? Well, I started saying, man, I got to speak to myself in a much nicer way. Right? How we speak to ourselves is more important than how everyone else in the world speaks to us combined. So I started writing a letter every morning, Dear Josh. And it's written from my higher self, right? That leader who takes care of everyone, who cares about everybody, to my inner child, to that little dude who's on that little picture, right? I'm writing to that kid every morning, saying, brother, you got this. You can do this. You're going to be okay. And I love you. I finish that letter every morning with, you have everything you need inside of you. I love you. And that's how I finish my journaling practice. I do that every morning. It helps me course correct. Think about it. If you shoot an azimuth and run 1,000,000 miles an hour in that direction and never stop to go, am I going the right way? Where are you going to end up? You're going to end up in Timbuktu, probably with the wrong stuff in your hands, right? So we got to slow down. We got to take a look at what we're doing. So having that period of formal reflection is everything. So try and get a period of formal reflection. It allows us to stop and kind of take a look at what we're doing. Next, we can move into intentional action. It's being intentional with our time, right? It's putting something on to our schedule that we're going to have time for us, right? We're going to challenge our minds, our bodies, our souls, right? We're going to do something for us. When you do something for yourself, right, you gain self-respect. It's the deepest form of respect. Nobody can give that to you, and no one can take that away. No boss, no family member, no nothing. That's on you, right? And when we think about our actions, how we're living, it's 2023. You can Google it right now. Over 90% of our thoughts are repetitive day to day. 90%. And that sounds like bad news. You feel like, oh man, what are we, automatons? No. Actually, it's good news. It means we're habitual creatures, right? We get into routines and we start to do things. So what that allows us to do is we can look at our habits and we can actually change them. And here's the good news. You don't have to kick out a bad habit. It's so hard to quit a bad habit, isn't it? It's just a hard thing to do. The good news is you can just take a different look at what you're doing and move in a good habit. Now, what I did, I had a habit about 3 years ago. My whole life I've had this habit, biting my nails. Man, I'm Mr. Discipline, all this. I talk a lot of smack, and here I am with these busted up nails looking like roast beef, man. I got cuticles all over the place, and a couple of years ago, I decided I'm going to stop biting my nails. And I kind of took this approach. And what I did, I went down to Walgreens, and I got one of those, any ladies in here? I know there's a few ladies in here. I got one of those little 4-packs of like nail clipper things. It comes in a little plastic thing. It's got a big nail clipper, a toenail clipper, a little fingernail clipper, a long file, and then like that wooden medieval stick with the point. I don't know what that thing's for. I threw that thing out, right? So I sit down the first night. I got a couple little creams and lotions from my wife's cabinet, right? I got all my stuff together. I became a little nail technician, straight up, right? So I clip it took 5 minutes. I clip my nails, I do a little file thing, I put the little cream on, boom, I'm done. So I do that every 3 or 4 days for about 2.5 weeks. And you know what started happening? Every time I went to bite my nails, I was like, what are you doing, man? You take care of those things. Why are you trying to bite your nail? Like, it straight up like changed in my head. And there's a metaphor here, guys. Think about it, man. Not to say this was me, but there could have been a time in my life where, I like to have 3 or 4 or 6 whiskeys a night, right? So if you want to slow down on drinking, right? Think about this for a minute. Say you're drinking 6 beers, 12 beers, whatever it is that you're drinking at night, right? To kind of take the edge off, cool out, whatever you want to do. And you want to cut down on drinking, but you really enjoy it, and you're having a good time. So instead of dropping drinking, why don't you say, hey, I'm going to run twice a week in the morning, right? Maybe start off with a mile. And you go and you try and run on a Friday morning. You try and run that mile, but you had 6 whiskeys the night before. Something starts to go in your brain. You're like, maybe I should have 3 whiskeys next Thursday. And then you go, oh shit, I'm okay with 3 whiskeys. Maybe I don't need 6. And things start to happen. So instead of like trying to stop the negative stuff, just try and bring in some positive stuff, right? As things start to kind of change. Things start to kind of shift for you. So kind of look at the areas of your life that you want to improve and start taking positive, intentional action. One more thing on habits that's really, really cool is something called habit stacking. I don't know if anyone in here is familiar with James Clear or Atomic Habits, but habit stacking is taking a habit that you've already got and adding a habit that you want to add. So for me, I live in the mountains right now, right out west. It's very sunny. I got a lot of real estate with a big nose and a bald head, right? This is terrible when it comes to skin cancer. I wasn't very good at putting on sunscreen. So I use this habit stacking thing. I brush my teeth every day. Most of us do, I hope, right? So next to my toothpaste in the morning, I just put my sunscreen there. So as soon as I'm done brushing my teeth, I take the sunscreen, put it on my dome, good to go. Boom, that's a habit stack. The other one we did was we had trouble cleaning out the car. So every time we fill up the car with gas, we throw everything in the trash. Little things like that, we can kind of switch within our life. Little things, right? And then finally, when we think about our perspective, right? This is the last thing for the pilot. When we're exploring perspective, that just means looking at different ways to look at things, right? For me, a lot of this kind of centered around objection. How many people do you know? I'm sure it's nobody in this room. You're like, I want this to be a red day. I want this to be a red day. I want this to be a red day. You show up, boom, the day is green. And you're like, oh my God, it's a green day. Can you believe it's a green day? You know why it's a green day? You know whose fault this is that it's green day? Right? And you just start whining and complaining about what the day is. Look, man, the circumstances are the circumstances, right? When are we going to accept it and deal with it? We have to accept reality on reality's terms as reality is, not as we would prefer it to be. Think about this. Think about how much time in your life you devote to the difference between how you want things to be and how they are. It's just about accepting things. It's accepting things as they are, right? Another piece of perspective that helps me a lot, instead of saying, why me, right? Things get tough. Things are hard. It's easy for us to go, oh my God, this is so bad. This is so tough. This is so rough. Why is this happening to me? Forget all of that. And I use this with military leaders a lot. Instead of saying, why me, say, what's the lesson here? What can I learn, right? Because when things get hard, when we go in the valley, what happens? We have a propensity to put our head in the sand and go, oh, I don't want to deal with this, right? I'm going to drink. I'm going to numb this out. I'm not going to pay attention to that. That's not happening over there. This isn't happening. We do all these things instead of keeping our eyes open. When it's tough, When things are rough, we've got to keep our eyes open. And it's twofold. Why? One, so the next time we walk through that valley, because we're going to again, dude, life goes up and down. It's not going to be easy the whole time, right? We need the good and the bad. You've heard the sunshine and the rain before. It's true. There's a reason that cliche sticks. We're going to go up and down. So we keep our eyes open in the valley so the next time we're in the valley, we can walk through a little more skillfully. And oh, by the way, we can grab somebody and go, hey, brother, I got you. I've been through this valley before. Follow me. Let's roll, right? So it's kind of just a different look at our perspective, a different look on things. And the last thing I want to touch on, just as the pilot with perspective, is happiness. I told you I was going to drink a lot of water. Is happiness. I didn't even drink last night, guys. is our happiness. I think we've got an issue with the way that we perceive happiness or the way we think about happiness, right? I'll be happy when, right? I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I get this promotion. I'll be happy when it's happy hour. I'll be happy when this bald guy shuts up, right? I'll be happy when this. I'll be happy when that. And it's all about, like, if you think about the assumptions underlying that, we're kind of putting happiness as like a destination that we have to get to, right? It's like, oh, I'll be happy when I get there. The reality is we can look at happiness as our vehicle that we travel in. And we can find happiness right now, right here. We can find it through inner peace, through connection with ourselves and connection with others. Connection with others is so important. And that kind of brings us into our first class cabin, right? Who are those people in our life that are getting all of our attention, our love, and our care? Who's getting the free drinks? Who's getting the hot meals, right? Big question for you guys. Should they be? Look around. I've had to do this many times in my life. We've got relationships around us that shouldn't be around us. People that are getting a lot of our time that don't deserve it. And oh, by the way, maybe we've got some people in the main cabin that we haven't talked to in a while that we need to connect with. Some friends, some people we love, right? We see on social media they got a new car, so we think we know what's going on in their life. Like, right? Reach out to that cat. Have a conversation, right? We've got to really invest in our relationships. The longest study on happiness, the Grant study out of Harvard, right, came down to one thing. Happiness relies on one thing, our relationships. And oh, by the way, they found correlated biological data that said your relationships actually influence your longevity and how long you live. So let's take a look at those relationships, right? How about household relationships? For us, man, my wife and I, about 5 years ago, established household relationships. And I know that sounds funky. It's like, what are you doing, man? Bringing home some corporate jargon into your house, right? You're out of your mind, dude. But the reality was, I don't know if anybody else in here has done this, but I'll be driving in the car, and I get hey, why don't you make the left? What? Why don't you make that left? Because I don't make a left there. That's not where I make the left, right? And that balloons into a 2-day episode where I'm not talking to my wife, my best friend, right? And I could hold that grudge, dude. That silence, I'm good. I'll hold that. I won't talk, But, dude, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? We're wasting so much time of our life with this little BS fight, right? So we establish values. And I'm not a smart man. I'm definitely not the coldest beer in the fridge, right? So what I used was Hull. I liked hockey growing up. Brett Hull. He had a great slap shot. Hull, right? It's harmony, understanding, listening, and love. Those are our 4 values, and we agreed on them. Go home and have this conversation with your spouse or your kids. And we did it on a Saturday morning, right? Beautiful time of the week. So we decided harmony, understanding, love, and listening. That's what's important to us. So the next time the fire of the moment kind of takes over, right? And we start to get into that crazy like fever pitch, we kind of look at each other and giggle now. It's like, hey, are we going to do this? Really? Like, this isn't what we're about, is it? So we have those values and we have them kind of established. The next thing I want to kind of talk on about our families, and I got this from a Vietnamese monk, guys. I spent the last 10 years, but more importantly, the last year and a half studying with some really weird people. I do a lot of cool stuff. I get the chance to hang out with a lot of cool people. I spent last week with the Air Force. I spent time with Tibetan monks, indigenous leaders, Navy SEALs, fire chiefs, law enforcement officers, and my beautiful community here in construction. This is where I spend my time. And I got these 3 questions from a Vietnamese monk. And I'll challenge everybody here. I don't care if you've been married for 5 years, 5 days, or 50 years. Go home and try these questions. And I can send these out. I can get these questions sent out because they're really, really cool. The first one, you go home and to your spouse and say, hey, are there things I can learn about you? Are there things I can learn about you? Earnestly ask that question, right? And then, are there things I can do better? And then finally, do you feel heard, understood, and considered? Just try it. If you can remember one of those, ask one of them. They're incredible questions to ask people in your home, especially your spouse, right? But finally, with your deepest relationships, and this is something I learned from probably some of the toughest duty I had in the United States military, and that was the casualty duty I had, guys, and the funeral duty. I had the unique honor to attend more funerals by the age of 25 than any man should in a lifetime. And when I attended those funerals, I did it in green suit with white gloves and a flag folded on my knee to give to the widow or give to the mother or the father and thank them for their son or daughter's service to this nation. And it was a solemn duty. It was super hard. I didn't really fully understand it at the time as a 24-year-old lieutenant when I was doing it on my way to go fight in that war that I was burying kids from. And I tell you what stuck with me more than anything, eulogies, man. Heartbreaking eulogies. I mean, the eulogies, I couldn't even tell you how many funerals we did, but the eulogies, hearing people wax poetically about these veterans, about these folks that cared about their families, that loved, that lived, that gave so much. And I heard all these incredible stories. I mean, just tears coming out of everybody about these young men or young women who lost their life fighting for our country, right? And it dawned on me. Most of those words fell on dead ears. Most of those words were never spoken to those people while they were alive. Why are we waiting till the funeral? Don't wait till the funeral. Look at the people in your lives. Talk to them. Tell them why they mean something to you. Why they're so important to you. What it is about them that makes you feel love in your heart. Do that. Talk to these people. Deepen those relationships. They're all we got. They're the most important thing we got. They give us everything. Finally, guys, the main cabin, right? We back up. Take a look at the main cabin. How are we going to take care of these people we lead? What does it mean to lead with mental health in mind? What does it mean to provide a safe place for people to work? We already know that we're struggling. We already know our workers are showing up to work with issues, right? With problems in their heart, with things that they're facing, right? With mental health issues. We have this going on in this country, in this industry, and for sure right here with the iron workers. We have this. So we know folks are coming in struggling already. How about making work a place that's awesome, right? We can provide 3 things for our people. 3 things: clarity, growth, and trust. Clarity, growth, and trust, which are all 3 words for love in action. Okay, clarity. The first thing, we know people are struggling. So let's take the ambiguity out of their lives, right? We got this big fear center in our brain, the amygdala, right? It lights up like a Roman candle when there's ambiguity. When we don't know what's around the corner, it's always perceived as negative. Biologically, in our brain, it is negative. When we don't know what's ahead, it's negative. So we have to work to provide clarity for our people. Nobody likes a pop quiz. When's the next inspection? When's the next discussion? When's the next time I've got to be standing tall, looking good, and delivering for the people, right? When is that? Knowing the schedule, letting people know what's ahead, right? Giving them clarity. One-on-one meetings. I ask leaders this all the time. Hey, how are your one-on-one meetings with your staff? And the answer I get most is, I work with those guys every day. I see them every day. I talk to them every day. Yeah, bro, that's not what I'm talking about. One-on-ones. Here's how I did it. I had 9 direct reports with a team of 40, right? Out of those 9 direct reports, I said, guys, here's what we're doing. At minimum, every 2 weeks, you and I are spending 30 minutes together. and it has nothing to do with the day-to-day projects and stuff we're working on, 30 minutes together, at least every 2 weeks. You could have up to an hour a week if you want it with me, because you're the most important thing we got. You're our people. But it's at least 30 minutes every 2 weeks with me, and here's what we're gonna talk about. It's 30 minutes, 10, 10, and 10. 10 on your heart, 10 on your home, 10 on your biz, okay? And some weeks, we just had a lot of business to talk about, right? And their home was fine, their heart was fine, everything's good, we rolled right into the business. But having that little space there so that people know that they can speak about their heart, how they're feeling, that they can speak about their family, what's going on at home, man, I tell you, everybody used it. And you know what happens? You start to get a lot more clarity on who you're dealing with, right? You get to know your people. Everybody says, oh man, we didn't see this coming. We didn't see this coming. Do we know our people? Take a good look in the mirror. Do you know your freaking people? Ask yourself that. That's a hard one. Do I know my people? Oh, we didn't know it was coming. Yeah, well, we didn't know Johnny was dealing with A, B, C, and D at home because we didn't take the time to get to know Johnny, right? We just accepted this answer every day. Another day in paradise. How many times do we hear that shit, right? It makes me sick. Drop it. Just stop it, man. It's the fakest answer there ever was. Ask somebody how they're doing and listen, man. People are struggling right here in this room. Ask somebody, give them that time, and let them tell you how they're doing. And with that clarity, it lets you know how you're doing with the boss too, right? How many of us have ran around? I have in my life going, oh shit, I wonder what the boss is thinking about me. I wonder if I'm doing a good job. Oh man, I don't know what he thinks about me. I don't know what she thinks. We think about that stuff. So let them know how they're doing. You have that one-on-one, they know where they stand, right? There's none of that ambiguity anymore. We provided some clarity. All it is showing a little bit of love. Growth, right? How do we provide growth? First of all, it's having a mindset of growth rather than a fixed mindset that we know it all, right? And this is the way we did it. This is the way we've always done it. No, man, we've got to have a growth mindset. We've got to look for opportunities to empower our people, right? Leaders don't create followers. Leaders create more leaders. That's what we're doing, right? We've got to look for opportunities to allow people to step up and lead. And we can do that whether we have a team of 1, 2, 4, 10, 200, 2,000, or 20,000. We can find these opportunities within our units, right? You guys, I'm sure everybody in here has either learned how to ride a bike or shown someone how to ride a bike with training wheels, right? When you take the training wheels off, I'm going to do this so you remember me. Look, you hold it like this, right? You hold somebody on the back of the seat and you let them go. Think about that visual and look for places in your units, in your organizations, in your shops to do that, to give someone a chance to be out front. What I did in combat, I was just talking with Bill about staff sergeants. And I know we've got veterans in here, and it warms my heart. Thank you so much for your service to this country. God bless you. God bless you. Thank you. Staff sergeants, to me, I have a special place in my heart for staff sergeants, E6s. They run the military. You can look at all the technology, all the defense spending, all the stuff we have, right? Everything we have in this great nation. And I'll tell you one thing, staff sergeants, NCOs, backbone, run our defense. They are the reason that we are so prolific on the battlefield. And what I did before combat, the 6 months leading up, we changed missions, right? We were an artillery company, artillery battery, and I didn't fire anything larger than a 50 cal in combat. We changed our mission, right? We started doing convoys and doing all this other crazy stuff. So took my men, and I say men because we're in an all-men unit back in the day, took my men out. And what I do with the staff sergeant, the squad leaders, those are my mission commanders, right? So we were running these missions, 4, 6, 8, 12-hour missions, getting trained up 6 months before we head into the bush. And I'd take the staff sergeant and I'd be like, grab him by the neck, come here. What are you doing, sir? You're not participating. Grab your teammates. And we'd grab PFCs and E4s, right? Folks that have been in the military for between 1 and 3 years. Hey, they're running these missions. Have the sergeant right behind them, helping them out, calling in stuff on the radio, showing them what needed to be done when they start stumbling, right? But you put those boys out in front. You give them a chance to lead. You know how much better it feels when you show up to work and the boss is putting you out front and giving you competent leaders to help you, to mentor you through it, right? And now when you start doing stuff like that, that relationship starts. It happens. Most of the leadership is caught, not taught. Right? It just starts to happen. People start acting that way. They start looking out for each other, and they start trying to teach each other. Right? They start leading. Leadership development becomes part of your blood. And oh, by the way, this is going to help people's mental health. It's going to help people be happier, feel fulfilled, feel some of that self-respect I talked about, right? And finally, guys, trust. Trust. Such a hard thing. They say it's gained in drops and lost in buckets. And that's true. That's true. Trust is a really hard thing to engender. So how do we do it? You heard me say get to know your people, right? Get to know them. My favorite general officer in the history of general officers, generals all have, they get these cool nicknames. Kevin, I know you know about that. You've got a lot of friends with cool nicknames. They get a cool nickname when you become a general officer. This general's nickname was Muddy Boots. By far the coolest nickname of a general you could ever have. You can imagine 4 stars on your helmet, all the stuff, gray hair coming out the side, just muddy ass boots in the field with his troops. And I use that metaphor for every CEO I work with. You know, when's the last time you're out on the job site, boss? Get that shiny hard hat and get out there. Go ahead and show them what you're made of. But get out there, man. Be there with your guys. Get to know them, right? We've got to get to know our people. We've got to get to know what makes them tick. That's how we become the leading indicator, right? You're out ahead of it. You know what's going on. It's usually not the workplace that's causing our mental strife. It's what's going on outside of the workplace. So we got to be a little bit more human, guys. All right? Another day in paradise isn't going to work anymore. That's dead. It's over. What we did, too, to have people get to know each other, right? What we're doing here. And you all know this. The time spent outside of these things together, just chopping it up, that's the time when you make friends. That's the time when you get to know people, right? That's when the real value is eschewed from these different conferences and times we come together, the brotherhood, the sisterhood, right? We get to feel it. But getting people to know each other as leaders, we have to look for situations and ways to bring people together. What I did with those 9 direct reports, every Monday morning, we had a meeting, right? We had a team meeting. It was 9 of us, and it was an hour-long meeting. And we got to a lot of biz, and we got to a lot of things, but the absolute first thing we did at the top of every meeting, first thing, heart check. And we did this starting in 2020, heart check. How are you, brother? Just around the room, real quick. And most people, hey, I'm doing great, everything's good, good weekend, blah, blah, cool. Go around. And every single week, it never failed, 1 or 2 people would be, man, I had this rough thing go on and this and that. Well, I had this guy, my Northwest guy, comes on this Monday morning, and he starts talking about an issue that he has with his older teenage son. The kid's 18. I got nothing for him, In fact, none of us really had anything good, to advise him with his acute problems of the day. We all said, hey, brother, we're here for you. Can I pick up some work for you this week? Hey, we shuffled some things around. Why don't you take Tuesday and Wednesday off, bro? Whatever you need, we'll take care of you. So we did that. I went on about my day. I found out 3 weeks later that the new guy we hired in South Carolina had heard what the guy in the Northwest said, called him after the meeting, and went through the same thing with his kids that were in their 20s. He just went through it 5 years ago. They had this long conversation. The guy was new. And those 2 cats bonded. Are you going to tell me for one moment that team isn't stronger now because of that phone call, because of that shared hardship that these people spoke through, right? And that wasn't me. I didn't do any of that. A lot of us as leaders think we have to do so much. I got to do this. I got to lead them. I got to do this. I got to do that. Man, we've got to create space for humans to be awesome, for humans to connect. We're full of love. It's our nature to help each other. Look at this room. Look at the people that are here, the care in here, right? We care for one another. We don't want to be shitty. We want to be great. We just got to give each other that chance to get to know each other. We've got to work to get fear out of our organizations, guys. There's so much fear. But the other side of fear is love. And that's what we need. That's all we need. Thank you guys so much for your time tonight. Really appreciate it. Thank you guys.